We have just lost one of the most iconic 3-episode performances in history, with Brad leaving in the 3rd episode of Survivor 41, and I am absolutely devastated. I'm even feeling a little bit delusional, like I'm starting to truly believe that Butterfly's a dead relative saying hi. And with all the strategy and advantages flowing through the game, I'm as confused as a goat on AstroTurf. But we will again try to break down this crazy season, focusing in on the 5 most strategic decisions which occurred within this episode. If you also only didn't realise until now that broccoli is just a bunch of small trees, make sure you hit that subscribe button to ensure that you are across all of the strategies occurring within every episode of this season. And now that I've officially obtained immunity, let's get straight into these 5 key strategic decisions. So as always, we're going to kick things off with strategic decision number 1, and this time it's the Beware Advantage, but the 2nd edition. So firstly, it looks as though the Beware Advantage could maybe be a theme this season, and maybe for even seasons to come. So I think this as a concept is a great idea by production rather than it being just a one-off, and it actually makes it quite a big decision whether to open this advantage when you do see it later on in the game, or in future seasons, due to the range of penalties that could apply. Now I do think it is a little bit early, to be honest, to be bringing in a second Beware Advantage at this stage of the game, especially when the first hasn't even been resolved yet. It does take a lot away from the relationship building and character moments of the game, if it is all about advantage this, advantage that taking up most of the episode, but I think the idea as a concept overall is quite good. So focusing on the decision making around these advantages if they were to pop up, as we saw with the first Beware Advantage involving the idol, you lost your vote permanently until all advantages were found, and that is a huge penalty overall. But in this circumstance with the boat trip, you may lose your vote just for one tribal, so it's not anywhere near as big of a penalty, and it's also a much easier mission to complete, so to speak. So it will be interesting to see with these vast differences if people do decide not to open them in the future. Now in terms of opening this specific Beware Advantage, I just want to focus in on the Yellow Tribe, because they were the only ones that knew this type of advantage existed previously. For the Blue and Green Tribes, as I discussed in episode 2, if this is the first time you've seen it, you pretty much have to open it out of curiosity alone. But it's definitely more of a decision to make for the Yellow Tribe, given they knew of Xander's advantage and the severe penalty he currently had for opening it. So the question is for this tribe, was it smart for them to open this advantage? So the first thing I thought of for this advantage, it was so out there in the open and easy to find that they must have known that this would be similar with the other 2 tribes. So in the case it was like the first Beware Advantage where each tribe had to find it for it to be active, then they must have known they all would have been able to find it extremely easily. So the penalty may have not even come into play at all with that information. So with all the information that they possessed previously, I can definitely understand why they did open it in this circumstance. But if I was Liana or Evie, in the case it was a horrible penalty like it was for Xander, I would have really been pushing for Tiffany to be the one to open it so the penalty would not apply to me. So I don't think Liana should have been that unhappy that she wasn't the one to find it first, as seeing an alliance member basically be the one to take the risk could actually be more beneficial to your game. In the circumstance it was a far worse penalty, she would have been extremely thankful that she was not the one to open it. I actually think a pretty legitimate strategy is getting people in your core to be the ones to open these advantages, so you can potentially reap the benefits without being the one risking the penalty. But we will have to see how this risk versus reward balance plays out as more of these are introduced into the game. But this all leads into the second strategic decision, which was the steal a vote versus TARP dilemma that these 3 contestants faced. So this was very similar to the summit, but not exactly the same. So if everyone picked TARP, they would all get a TARP. If everyone picked steal a vote, they would all lose their vote. But if it was a mix, then those that picked steal a vote would obtain that advantage, and those that picked TARP would get nothing. So I definitely liked the idea of discussions taking place prior to this decision being made in private, as I think you really have to play into the fact that cross-tribal relationships may have already been formed, with the likes of Deshawn and Evie, or Xander, Danny and JD, that only those contestants are privy to. So the best thing to do is to try and create your own cross-tribal bonds that could be beneficial to you down the road. So I think Tiffany was probably a little bit too forward and a touch over the top here in this circumstance. Rather than trying to be more sociable to try and get a unanimous decision between the 3, and I do think this could have actually happened if they were to break it down for each of them individually. I don't necessarily think there's a blanket rule of you should pick TARP or you should pick Steal a Vote. I think it definitely comes down to your tribal numbers, your alliance number breakdowns, your personal game, and how votes may play out on your tribe. So for Tiffany, she's currently in a tribe of 4, so votes are far more important overall for her, so I do think she made the correct choice for me in picking TARP and protecting her vote. She absolutely needs her vote, especially in the case that Xander obtains an idol. If Liana and Tiffany are a tight 2, and Xander gets this idol, then they can throw 1 vote on Evie, so there would be 2 votes on Xander, 1 on Evie, and then 1 vote on whoever Xander decides to vote for. Then that guarantees Tiffany and Liana's safety, with either Xander or Evie going home. With smaller tribe numbers, there is a greater reliance on your vote, so I think Tiffany did make the correct decision here. But when you compare this to Brad, regardless of tribe numbers for him, he also definitely made the correct decision in going for the Steal a Vote advantage. He may not have even had his vote regardless at the next tribal council, with having the first Beware advantage in his possession. So even if they all lost their vote, there was a high chance it wouldn't have even affected him at all anyway. So it was definitely a good call by him as well in picking the Steal a Vote advantage. Now for Sydney, based on the edit and the limited amount of information that we do have for the blue tribe at this time, it is looking like it is a clear 5-1 vote on Nasir. So if I was her, I definitely would have gone for the advantage. If she loses her vote, it should still be a 4-1 vote on Nasir. So this is an example of a low risk, high reward situation. So for me, Brad and Tiffany made the correct strategic decision, and Sydney made the incorrect strategic decision in this circumstance. So whilst we have Sydney and Nasir on topic, let's move to strategic decision number 3. And this is Sydney telling the rest of her tribe that Nasir wanted to take Danny out of this game. So I do have mixed opinions on this, as being on a tribe where it really does look like everyone is against Nasir, it does cement this position for the rest of her tribe mates and pushes them even more so in the direction to take Nasir out of this game, especially for Danny and Deshawn, whose names were brought up in this conversation. However, whilst I do understand why she did give up this information, I think Sydney was way too open in the way that she delivered it, and she could have also at least tried to have this secret alliance with Nasir as well as being in this strong group of 5. Now let's say their tribe never loses a challenge, and they make it all the way to a swap, which at this stage is looking very possible. Nasir could have ended up being a person she could work with deep into the game. I think contrasting the game style of Sydney to say Shan from the Green Tribe for example, who is aligned with everyone in such a great way that no matter which way the game goes she is in a strong position with whoever she is swapped with. But let's say Sydney and Nasir are the only people from the Blue Tribe that are now swapped together. Nasir could now easily throw her and the rest of the Blue Tribe under the bus, as now it is so obvious that he is on the outs, rather than if he was under the illusion that he was safe with Sydney in a 2-person alliance. Keeping someone on the outs like the Blue Tribe is seemingly doing with Nasir at this point in the game can actually be quite dangerous long term, and having everyone at least feel like they are safe when they aren't is much more of a viable strategy when these tribe swaps or mergers inevitably occur. So the next strategic decision I'll be discussing goes back to the first Beware advantage and having to say your phrase at the immunity challenge. So we saw Brad slide his phrase in there. He did stumble upon his words a little bit, but he eventually pretty much got it done. And Xander was able to play on the delusion aspect to say his phrase again, which I thought was very well executed by him yet again. But I'm not sure how he's going to be able to bring it up a third time, but it'll be very funny to see it all play out. However, I just want to go through a potential strategy that I am interested in hearing all your thoughts on. So since the previous episode, I've read the full advantage and it states you must say a secret phrase in front of the other players at the next immunity challenge. So playing the waiting game for someone else to say their phrase first, as I mentioned in this episode 2 breakdown, wasn't actually a viable strategy. You must say it at the next challenge after finding it. You don't have a choice in the matter. However, the note doesn't say the time during the challenge that you have to say it. So it seems by default that everyone seems to think these phrases must be said prior to the challenge taking place when all of the tribes are together. But with the terminology on the clue, I don't think that's necessarily the case. So for example, at the end of this challenge in the throwing portion, after constantly missing the bags, or if there was say a puzzle portion at the end of a challenge, a contestant on the Blue Tribe once they've found the clue could yell out, "Man, I'm as confused as a goat on AstroTurf here." Doing it mid-challenge especially, with this particular phrase could mask it a lot more than it being said in front of everyone at the start of the challenge. Once all 3 phrases have been said at the same challenge, then the idols become active. It doesn't say when at the challenge that you have to say it. So although it probably wouldn't be as production designed it to play out, I think it could actually be quite a good loophole to mask this phrase overall. Anyway, that's just an idea, we'll see how it all plays out. But after the challenge, that leads into the 5th and final key strategic decision of this episode, and that is who the Green Tribe should vote out. So this was actually a pretty interesting decision, and ultimately it came down to Shan and Ricard debating between Brad versus JD. So firstly, I think definitely the correct move for Ricard is to get rid of Brad. He's basically in a 3-person alliance with JD and Shan and hasn't got anything going with Brad or Jeannie, and is pretty open about that as well, so to me it is a no-brainer for Ricard on which way to go. But for Shan, there is a much bigger decision to make between the two, as she is working with both sides. She also caught JD in the act with the extra vote poking out of his pants, which does display a high level of distrust by JD. And then on the other side, she has Brad, who has 2 advantages, which is obviously a big threat on the surface, but he has also shown extreme trust in Shan. She is his obvious number 1 ally, and I think he would be willing to use these advantages in the future on her. So I think between the two, the clear-cut move for Shan is actually to get rid of JD. She was able to obtain JD's extra vote as well and have it in her possession, which I assume she would get to keep if he was eliminated. And she has Brad on her side as a clear number 1, which could replace Ricard if he was to crack it in the next episode or did not agree with her decision. But either way, she is in a majority of 3 whichever way she goes, and she is almost debating between someone who has displayed full trust in her for the entirety of the game in Brad, versus someone who has displayed clear distrust by keeping things hidden from her in JD. So I personally don't love this move for Shan, and I do think Ricard did very well to talk her into what was best for his personal game overall. But I do think there was actually a third option that they didn't consider within the edit, which could have been very good for Shan, and that was voting out Jeannie. So Jeannie is pretty clearly not going to be aligned with Ricard, so it could have been a very easy sell to him to vote her out. It also keeps Brad in the game and makes him really not have much of an option but to continue riding it out with Shan, as his other closest ally is out of the game, and it keeps the tribe strong for challenges potentially losing their weakest link and also keeping their strongest. Shan could have also made up a lie and told Brad after the vote that they previously caught JD having this advantage of an extra vote, so they decided to flip the vote at the last minute in the fear that JD, Ricard and his extra vote could have taken Brad out of the game, so Shan changed it up last minute to protect him. And I think Brad probably would have bought it and then he still would have stayed close with Shan long term. I definitely think there was a lot of merit in voting Jeannie out in this situation, and I think it definitely should have been at least explored by these castaways. But overall, I am very disappointed to see Brad go. I think he was a fantastic character. I think he had one of the best 3 episodes in terms of entertainment value we have ever seen from a castaway, ranging from absolutely horrendous gameplay, to quite decent gameplay, to humorous strategies, along with his great confessionals, and he did it all with such passion. I'm sad to see him go for sure, and I really hope he gets a second chance in the future. But that leaves 2 tribes down to 4 members each, with the Blue Squad steamrolling ahead at the moment with no swaps potentially in sight. So I am keen to see how it all plays out in the coming weeks. If you are enjoying hearing these perspectives on Survivor 41, make sure you are subscribed to the channel to stay tuned with these breakdowns coming each and every week. But for now, this is Analytical Strategy signing out once again, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.